Welcome to the Art Talk podcast, where I discuss the stories that help us accomplish to be better artists as well as better art entrepreneurs. I am Karin Merks, your host, and I'm artist, art entrepreneur, and art coach or teacher. This is Art Talk episode 4. In today's episode, I have an exclusive interview with author, writer, playwright, and early modernist Elizabeth Amizu. Art is never finished, only abandoned. Where the spirit does not work with the hand, there is no art. Painting is poetry that is seen rather than felt, and poetry is painting that is felt rather than seen. Leonardo da Vinci. One time, I received a book in the post just before I left on a holiday for a long weekend. In the train, I started reading and could not stop. It was the time that I started reading all the works, also the not yet published works of Elizabeth Amizu. As a very avid reader of about a book a week, I never before read young adult literature that spoke to me so strongly. The words, the sentences, and how they formed the story was so compelling. The quote of Da Vinci, where poetry is painting that is felt rather than seen, definitely came into my mind when I read the works of Elizabeth, which, by the way, have also a very strong visual aspect to them. So before I introduce Elizabeth, I want to read a very short part of that particular novel, Ripe Earth, the book I received as a gift from her. I am in chapter 4.1, Gwen. How many goodly creatures are there here? Myron's friends are his court. Their skins sparkle. They wear daggers in their belts. Their eyes are the color of oceans, forests, and fresh sand. All 20 announce themselves. Ephraim, Salika, Oscar, Devon, Tristan, Luke, Millie. Name after name. David, Daniel, Teddy, Mosi, Becca, Mark, Gian, Rabia, Kriya, Anam, Jordan, Kev, Jesse. They look like a collection to me, Myron's own personal collection. And the next part is Myron. I would not wish any companion in the world but you. My court announces themselves beginning with the last harvest. Ephraim, Salika, Oscar, Devon, Tristan, Luke, Millie, David, Daniel, Teddy, Mosi, Becca, Mark, Gian, Rabia, Kriya, Anam, Jordan, Kepth, and ending with the first to be beckoned, Jesse. These are my children. For each one I chose. They grow more beautiful with the harvests, their skins drink the island sun, their muscles change to journey faster, and their eyes widen to take in all there is to see and explore. Now let me introduce Elizabeth. She is a writer of several novels, as The Sakados Mysteries, Ripe Earth, Gild Your Shadows, a collection of brilliant short stories and also plays that she not only wrote, but also produced and played in, and she wrote a film script, Lifeboat, and maybe less known poetry. She also published the first academic book on Michael Jackson in 2016, published by academic publisher Prager. The plays she wrote are The Department, a dramatic reading in 2016 by professional actors at Leicester Square Reference Library in London. By the Book in 2012, which had a dramatic reading at Stratford Playhouse, London, by script readers. Seeing Red, she was the writer, director, and producer. It's a one-act play commissioned by a non-profit organization in Camberwell, performed with a cast of 30 teenagers from South London. Lightnings 2, Yoruba Gods, 2008, presented as part of her BA dissertation. How the themes of the spiritual and supernatural can explore the liminal adolescent space in today's contemporary theatre. Lightnings 1, A Fear of Falling Under, workshopped in association with the Buckinghamshire Children's University College Music and Drama Society. 10 for Superego, 2017, writer, director, producer and actor, which was the runner-up best play at the 2007 Festival d'Ivier at the Amphitheatre André Blondeau in Jouy, Paris. Also performed at the 9th Annual Bucks New University Arts and Media Conference. And then Lone, 2007, writer, director, producer and actor. A Christmas musical performed in the White Rooms, High Wycombe and Bar 1, Chalfont. In an episode of a podcast we did together, she said, "When you cut me open, words will fall out." Welcome, Liz. It's so good to have you as my first guest on my podcast, Art Talk. That was a very visual remark you made about words falling out of you. And could you tell us when it was that you knew you wanted to write and only write, when you felt that words were your vehicle to express yourself?
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm really, really pleased to be here. When I knew I wanted to write, I knew I wanted to write from the age of about 18. Previously to that, I was going to go to medical school and become a doctor. And then I decided when I got my grades for my A-levels that I was going to go and do a degree in creative writing, drama and film studies. And that was a big shift for me. So it was from the age of about 18 when I knew that I wanted to write and I wanted to only write and wanted to write full time. And it wasn't till several years later that I could make that dream a reality.
Fantastic. And A Ripe Earth, the book I read a small part from, is your latest novel. And you use a very special way of presenting the thoughts of the two main characters, which makes it very visual. And that's also why I took two parts of the book, two different chapters close to each other. Can you explain what made you do this?
Well, I'm a very cinematic writer. I write in a very cinematic style, and I like this concept of the split screen in film. And so I wanted to write a book that would have this sort of split screen model as a narrative model. And so that's kind of what led me to giving each chapter is presented from Gwen's point of view and then from Myron's point of view. And then it's the sense that the author, the reader will decide who they believe, who they'll side with, whose story that they choose to agree with after they've read both sides of the argument. Because it's definitely a little bit like a court case. You're reading the evidence and you're trying to ascertain who's guilty and who's innocent and what the result should be, kind of thing, and what the verdict should be. And I also used to love reading these like goosebump books when I was little. They were written by R.L. Stine. And the nice thing about the goosebump books is that if you turn them over, you would have another book.
Oh, that would kind of you have a front side, you turn it around, and you have another book.
Another front side, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I really loved those models of writing, and I kind of wanted to make Ripe Earth one of those books. But in the end, I chose to do a split screen model instead, because I felt that kept the tension going. Once you got to the end, I didn't think you'd want to read from the beginning again. I thought that you'd want to keep the tension going and the mystery going as to what's going to happen to the characters throughout the novel.
Absolutely true. That's what kept me going in it, because as soon as I found out you wrote it this way, I had like, okay, if this is Earth, I want to know what he is thinking. And you do this so brilliantly because you really go into the head of Gwen, but you also go into the head of Myron. And I do not want to spill any beans because people, you need to read this book. It is absolutely brilliant. And you made a right choice there because that keeps you going and you want to know, and it builds attention also. And also the role of the people in the court. You know, you think Gwen and Myron are the main characters, but the court and the people around it start to infiltrate in there in a way that makes it so compelling. You know, they're starting to choose sides.
I was thinking about like the concept of the hero and the concept of the villain, and the fact that if we hear the interior monologue, the interior thought processes of the villain, that we might not think of them as such. We might think of them as something different. And that's why I wanted to give Myron as much airtime in the novel as I gave Gwen, the hero. Yeah. Because I wanted to kind of upturn the concept of the hero and the villain.
Brilliant. And when you write, have you already explored your characters and what they will be, or is this more organic?
I go for both models. I have some files full of character profiles written in detail. What's their favorite food? What's their favorite color? What's their favorite thing to do? I have like really detailed files annotating characters. But then at the same time, I also go for an organic point of view when I write, to try and see what the characters will tell me, how the characters will evolve over time. Because I've been working with the Sacerdos Mysteries since I was 15, I started writing it. So that's almost 20 years I've been working with the Sacerdos Mysteries. And I find that really comes from an organic place. I read the series regularly to try to give me more of a sense of where to go with it and what the characters would do. And my most recent novel of the series is called Disequilibrium. Mm-hmm. And in that took a really lots of drastic turns left and right that I wasn't expecting. It's the fourth book in the series.
Can you read a small part out of it?
Sure. I'll give you the précis. It says, the Advorsa were not running the world. They were draining it dry. And if they had their way, there wouldn't even be a world. Kailara Teneo is so powerful she can command the sky and sea. But in Disequilibrium, her battle is with heartache. The Terra Magna has fallen under Lassius' spell. The people of her world turn against the gifted and hunt them for their magical blood. Their long reign has reached its end. Kailara's quest for answers leads her away from the arcane rebellion to far colder climes. Yet, she is not alone. The two loves of her life remain by her side and at war with one another.
Brilliant. Yeah, I've read all books and they're so amazing. And I have to think about it a lot because you created the metaverse in this. We are going into that as you really did.
I really love building worlds. Mm-hmm. I love fantasy worlds. Some of my favorites are like the Discworld novels by Terry Pratchett. I love the Wizarding World by J.K. Rowling. I love world building. And the more you write in the world, the more detailed the world becomes and the more kind of visceral and organic it becomes.
Yeah, because that's what I also love in your Sacerdos books series is that some characters can die and then somehow they come back, but in a very special way. Are you surprised by that when that happens? Is that an organic thing?
I was very surprised. One of my characters I brought back because so many fans wanted him back. And I wasn't finished with the character either. And the way the character died wasn't the end. And that's a big theme in the series, that death is not the end. That there's lots of characters who die and then come back in different ways. At one point in the series, there's a possession, and the spirit of a dead character comes back.
Yeah.
I really like this concept that death is not the end. And if you read the Sacerdos Mysteries, it's quite ethereal, it's quite ephemeral, it's quite spooky, and you can kind of believe that those characters can resurface because of the world of gifted blood and the magic that exists in the world, with the portals and different approaches to the afterlife. So the afterlife is not the end. But for some characters it is. And a lot of characters die in the series and they just stay dead.
Yeah. Okay. And that's what it is. But it is a very special series. And I know you're working on more editions of it, and which I'm looking forward to. You write specifically for young adults. And the Sacerdos Mysteries is always also targeted towards young adults. What made you write specifically for young adults?
Well, it's just basically because when I started writing, I was a young adult.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That was the main thing. And then as I've grown older, the series has evolved. The Sacerdos Mysteries series has evolved and has grown into much more grown-up themes. And I think that the series that did that the most that I can think of is the Noughts and Crosses series by Mallory Blackman.
A very good series on TV, by the way. Yeah, I've seen it.
They changed some things on the television version. I would definitely read the book, because they changed some things on the television version. As the characters evolved, they grew up. And so even though the first book is for a YA audience, I start feeling that it's for new adults, that my books are for new adults especially, as well as young adults.
Yeah, and now, to be honest, I think you were ahead of time. It really speaks to what we are going through in the world with building metaverses. Like Facebook has called himself Meta now, but there are so many more meta worlds out there. And your books really fit into this whole situation. I think new adults will love this.
Yeah, it's a really dynamic, vibrant world. In the world, you have the gifted, who are light-blooded, earth-blooded, wind-blooded, and they have different blood types that correspond with the elements, and that gives them powers, and their powers equate to different houses or orders in the educator of the Sacerdos Institute. And the Sacerdos Institute is where we begin our story, pretty much. And we kind of get our introduction into the world of the gifted. And that metaverse, or that universe, is really, really dynamic and powerful, because you have portals in the world, and the portals transport characters from place to place.
Yeah, and that makes it so exciting to read it, because you constantly come into a world where you learn something. There is a point where you can connect, and there's a point where you learn something completely new. And that's also a thing in your work. There is this aspect that at one point in history we started with the telephone, and people have this like, this is a scary thing in the house. I suddenly can talk, and I hear someone on the distance. Now we all have a mobile, and the landline hardly exists anymore. But that landline is now seen as authentic. And the the mobile is new. But in your work, you still connect to that. What was it? It's never gone. It's still valid.
Yeah, because I'm a fan of like the steampunk genre. And one of my favorite series is Joss Whedon's Firefly.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the concept of like technology that hasn't quite given up, technology that we haven't let go of yet.
So yeah, that is the Sakados mysteries, and it's funny to hear that you started this when you were 15 years old and you were a young adult yourself, and now with writing the series, which continues, the characters grow with you in age, and that is amazing. Yeah, so let's go briefly to your plays, because they are both for young adults and for adults, and especially the one about teaching, The Department, which is hilarious. I've read it and I couldn't stop laughing, but it is a very dark type of humor. And I know you produce, and also but also with your covers. And as you just said, when you are writing down aspects of your characters, you know exactly how they look like. You have very, very specific visual ideas. So I give you a chance now here for The Department. How would you stage this play? And would it be something for teenagers and young adults to see, or only for adults?
The Department, I think, would be a great play for teenagers, because they have only one view of education. They have only like the side of being on that side of the mirror or that side of the whiteboard, and that the opportunity for them is to see sort of the inside track of education, what it looks like from the teacher's perspective, what the teachers have to go through and what they have to experience. So that's why I think The Department will be really good for teenagers. But it's also very, very good for adults, because it kind of explores the dynamic of the teaching world. I staged The Department very traditionally, mimicking a staff room very, very closely. I'd go for complete realism in the staging of the play, because I think that will add to the dynamics of the narrative itself and the dynamics of the play itself.
Great. So, well, maybe someone picks this up and wants to stage this with you.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. The Department was very well received the last few times it's been performed. So I would love, and now that I was listening to the radio recently and they were talking about teacher retention. And I used to be a teacher. I was a teacher for about 7 years in a college in Essex. They were talking about teacher retention, how that's a really big problem. And I think that's true. To keeping people in education, keeping people in the classroom, I think is a very big challenge, because the pay is not that great and the workload is very intense. And that's the kind of concepts and the kind of problems that the Department looks at.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I would definitely like to be part of that. And if I can help you with it, then let me know. So you also wrote The Dangerous Philosophies of Michael Jackson. That is your academic book published by Prager. And it leads into the next question, because I don't know if you were already studying early modern work when you wrote the Sakados Mysteries and Ripe Earth. Ripe Earth, probably. You have already done it, but in what way is your writing also influenced by your study of early modern work? And in relation then to maybe novels, but certainly also to work I didn't read. I did read, but isn't ready yet, is still on the shelf, and also in your Michael Jackson book.
Yeah. In 2013, I started a master's in early modern English literature. I had been teaching literature for a few years then, since about 2009. And I was very much fascinated by the print culture and the printing culture of Europe, especially, and of the UK and London. And the arrival of the printing press by William Caxton, and the sort of the evolution of grammar, the people like Samuel Johnson. And I was fascinated with early modern English literature as a whole. And the concept of racism, the concept of colonialism, because the two kind of grew together. They kind of grew alongside each other. And so I focused most of my studies on early modern literature, specifically The Mask of Blackness and The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare, The Mask of Blackness by Ben Jonson. And then in 2014, the Escape album came out, which was a posthumous album released by the Michael Jackson estate. And then there was a lot of furore or commotion around Michael Jackson again. And I was inspired to write an article for a journal about persona. And I was writing about Michael Jackson and the persona and his different personas. And I didn't get any joy from the publishers of the journal. They weren't really interested in the piece. But when I put the piece out online, there was a lot of excitement about it. And that kind of spurred me on to writing more articles and more essays about Michael Jackson. And then I, with my friend Karen Merckx, I started something called the Journal of Michael Jackson Academic Studies. I was given a publishing deal by ABC Clio, which is one of the top academic publishers in the world, to write a series of essays about Michael Jackson. And that became The Dangerous Philosophies of Michael Jackson, His Music, His Persona, and His Artistic Afterlife. I was really fortunate to have a foreword that was written by Joseph Vogel, who is the author of Man in the Music, The Creative Life and Work of Michael Jackson, which is an incredible book on Michael's work and his life. And so my early modern analysis, my early modern masters, gave me a lingua franca to discuss Michael Jackson as a passion project. And that's something I've been doing regularly ever since. I'm still writing in the area of Michael Jackson studies. I'm still very much interested in it. I have a podcast called Michael Jackson's Dream Lives On, an academic conversation, where with you, Karen, we look at academic analysis of Michael Jackson, essays and MA theses, books, not novels, academic books, reviewing them, also different concepts, theories around Michael Jackson is a real passion of mine. Michael Jackson and Harry Potter have been real passions of mine. So in the book, there's one chapter called Michael Jackson Split 7 Ways, and it's where I got to put my Harry Potter influence in the book. I talked about Michael Jackson as Horcruxes. And each of the Horcruxes are different people.
Yeah, can you read the introduction of that?
Sure, I'll read that for you. This is in a section called Art Beyond Life. This section focuses on Jackson's life in retrospect. It seeks to open a dialogue about Jackson's posthumous representation and ideological reconstruction. Above all, it seeks to encourage new ways of discussing Jackson's art, especially how his art is linked to his posthumous resurgence. Horcruxes, Michael Split 7 Ways, Jackson. Michael Jackson was inherently unique. His uniqueness often contributes to the problem of appreciating how he lived and signified as an artist. This chapter regards Jackson as subject to reduction by way of misunderstanding. It presents Jackson using 7 other artists in history as a prism through which to see him, especially in terms of biography and reception. It examines these aspects alongside those of classical composers Johann Sebastian Bach and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, actor and director Charlie Chaplin, filmmaker Walt Disney, and musicians James Brown, David Bowie, and Stevie Wonder. Another comparative chapter follows on Jackson and Andy Warhol. You split your soul, hide part of it in an object outside the body. Even if one's body is attacked or destroyed, one cannot die. J.K. Rowling.
Exactly. Brilliant. And that is how your work is completely intersected with not only your passions like Harry Potter and Michael Jackson, but also your early modern work, how you bring the time of Shakespeare and connect that to the now. And great artists like Michael Jackson, you can make that connection there.
Yeah, the early modern world is just a very formative time in culture and in literature. It's like a cradle. It's like a cradle of literature, and it's like a melting pot. And you have the kind of formative versions of so many things. And the thing that we take away from it, I think, the most is the work of William Shakespeare. Things like Romeo and Juliet and The Merchant of Venice. And from those pieces, from those works, you see an expanded version of what we know today to be art and to be literature. Mm-hmm. I also do something called Beyond Shakespeare, where we, which is an acting company and a podcast, where we're led by the fabulous Robert Crichton, where the early modern literature is explored. Early modern plays specifically are explored that are not Shakespeare. So it goes beyond Shakespeare. And I've done lots of work with them. It's been a fabulous ride. They did the Lord Mayor's show last year, which was fantastic. You can find that online. And I would strongly suggest and encourage you to listen to the Beyond Shakespeare podcast, because it's fantastic.
I know, I do it. And I will put a link in the show notes to their YouTube channel, because they are amazing. And it's fun. It's fun to listen to. You have so much fun reading those and singing even. It's brilliant.
Oh, yeah,
it's absolutely brilliant. It is reading, acting. It's a total theater, but then from everyone is in his own room, in his house. Some are in the UK, some are in the US, some are in Holland or in Germany, and you come together and you each has a role, and you play your role or sing your role or whatever. It's really fun to listen to. So I will put a link there. My last question to you is, do you have any tips for aspiring writers, and what would you advise them to do?
Tips for aspiring writers, definitely. I would definitely say get involved in the work of Julia Cameron. Julia Cameron is the ultimate guru for young writers. She wrote a book called The Artist's Way, and I would love to get young writers on that book. It's a course in creative writing and creative recovery. It doesn't have to just be writing, it's for everything, dancing, painting, everything you could do. And then start doing your morning pages, because the morning pages is in that book. And that's the first thing I would do as a writing teacher, is get my readers and my writers and my students hooked on Julia Cameron. The other thing I would love for you to do is to read a book called Manifesto by Bernardine Evaristo, because that is a wonderful book about how hard it can be in the industry, and how long it can take for you to break into the industry. It took me 10 years to get my first publication, to get my first traditional publication. I was self-published up until then. And I wanted to just draw your attention to my collection of short stories, Gild Your Shadow.
Yeah.
Because that has short stories written between 2003 and 2013. And that will show you how you expand and explore and evolve as a writer, as an artist. And that evolution is really important. Yes, you may become published. I've got several friends who are published and successful, and that is a wonderful thing, and that is the goal. But even if you don't become published straight away, there's lots of opportunities and avenues for you. And there's a lot of things that you have to say that needs to get put down on paper. And that's the most important thing. It's doing the work and making it a habit.
Absolutely. And I think what you say, that's, by the way, I mentioned that in the introduction, Gild Your Shadows, brilliant short stories. And there you have it, short stories. You don't have to start with a novel right away or a series like you did with the Sakados Mysteries. Start with a short story, which is difficult enough, but it's you get something on paper. And it is important to do that.
Yes. And it's to get that writing done and get it started and get it flowing, getting into the flow of the writing, because you're never sure what's going to take off. But what you have to do is you have to be present. As Julia Cameron would say, you have to show up to the page. Yeah. So that would be my advice. It would be definitely get onto the artist way as soon as you can.
Fantastic. And where can people buy your books or follow you? I will also put that in the show notes, by the way. But
yeah, my books are available to buy at Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk. They are also available in hardback on Lulu.com. This year, they're all coming out in paperback with all brand new covers. So they're all also available at Lulu.com. You can find me at Twitter, the handle at ElizaWriter1. And you can also find me on Instagram at ElizaWriter1 or at ElizaWriter, ElizaWriter1, or just ElizaWriter, Eliza Writer. I also have a website. It's elizabethamisu.com. And I'd love for you to join up to my mailing list. But and I also have a Patreon. So patreon.com/Eliza Writer.
Okay, great. I will put them all in the show notes. Fantastic, Liz. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being an inspiration, for being here with me, and for many, many books you wrote, plays you wrote, and I hope many more to come.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Our next episode will be about reinventing yourself as an artist. Underestimated, but extremely important. Thank you for listening. You can find my art on karinmerks.co.uk. You can find me on Instagram under Karin Merks and on Facebook Karin Merks Fine Art. You can also find me on Patreon, patreon.com Karin's Art Talk. Thank you for listening to this interview. And please don't forget to start reading Elizabeth's work. It's really worth it and you will thoroughly enjoy it. And if you have teenagers, young adults, then invite them to these books. Bye. I wish you a very peaceful and productive week. And remember, art is the cradle of your soul. Take care.